The Prime Minister of Nepal has resigned after the violent crackdown on protests in the country. The clashes between police officers and protesters left 19 dead and hundreds injured.
Nepal's recent political collapse has alarmed not only Asia but also leftist governments across Latin America. The People's Revolution, led by Nepali youth, proved that seemingly stable governments can fall to widespread public outrage. This scenario has caused concern among leaders like Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, the Cuban president Miguel Diaz-Canel, and even the current Brazilian leader, who share a similar ideological alignment to the one that was challenged in the streets of Kathmandu, Nepal. Welcome to Life in the Barracks. The crisis in Nepal gained prominence because it wasn't just about isolated protests, but a popular uprising that set public buildings on fire, including the Supreme Court and Parliament, the highest symbols of state power. Generation Z youth, angered by unemployment and corruption, defied repression and forced Prime Minister Jalanat Kanal to resign. The echo of this uprising resonated far, reaching the Americas, where leftist regimes watch with fear the possibility of their youth being inspired by this model of resistance. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Nepalese revolt was the digital mobilization, which gave a voice to the discontented. Despite the government-imposed blockade on social networks, young people found ways to bypass censorship and spread videos denouncing the so-called Nepo kids, who are the children of politicians flaunting their luxury. In contrast to the people's misery, this comparison directly bothers Latin American regimes, where political elites are also accused of living disconnected from the reality of their people. In Venezuela, Maduro faces ongoing corruption accusations and a discouraged youth struggling with unemployment and limited prospects. A generation protesting in Nepal and forcing a prime minister's resignation raises concerns that the same could occur in Caracas. After all, the ingredients are similar: economic crisis, political wear and tear, and increased. The Brazilian president, ideologically close to the Bolivarian leaders, is also watching apprehensively. Brazil has faced protests in different areas, and the youth, increasingly connected digitally, could become a vector of dissent, similar to what was seen in Kathmandu. Nepal's example shows that even drastic steps like censoring social networks may not stop mass mobilization. Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua is also closely watching the developments. His regime, accused of oppressing opponents and limiting freedoms, is facing wear and tear similar to the Nepalese government. The repression in Managua has already sparked revolts in the past, but the momentary victory of Nepalese youth may rekindle the hope of young Nicaraguans who see the People's Revolution as an inspiration to challenge power. The island of Cuba also experienced historic protests in 2021, led by young people who called for freedom and better living conditions. Although those acts were suppressed with an iron fist by the state, they showed that the new generation is not intimidated by repression.
They were protesting against the lack of food, medicine, and electricity. The pandemic caused the country's worst crisis in decades.
What happened in Nepal serves as a reminder to Diaz-Canel that new waves of protest can arise unexpectedly and destabilize a decades-old regime. Another aspect that draws the attention of Latin American governments is the speed with which events unfolded in Nepal. Maduro. Trump is back at the political center, rallying regional countries to isolate Caracas. Young people overthrowing a corrupt government in Asia reinforces the idea that authoritarian regimes are vulnerable to popular uprisings. Washington eagerly takes advantage of this. Videos of young Nepalese confronting police, setting buildings on fire, and denouncing the luxury of the elites circulate in international forums, reaching activists in Latin America. The symbolic impact of this act is enormous, as it creates an immediate parallel with the realities experienced in countries like Venezuela and Nicaragua, where social inequalities are growing under governments that claim to be popular. The resignation of the Nepalese Prime Minister after the tragic death of his wife, a victim of the fires caused by the protests, shows just how uncontrollable radicalization can become. This level of violence and political to see in their own territories. In Brazil, although the political system is more robust, dissatisfaction with corruption, privileges, and nepotism also fuels intense debates. The popularization of the term Nepo kids among Nepalese people may inspire young Brazilians to confront the children of politicians who flaunt wealth amid social inequality. What was seen in Kathmandu was a global warning that regimes based on repression and the privilege of elites are not safe, faced with a connected, outraged youth willing to risk everything for their nation. Nepal's future remains uncertain, but its message and impact are already global.
I've moved all the way back. Absolutely insane.
Here at VITA, at the barracks, you stay up to date with everything happening in the military world. Leave your like, subscribe, and watch one of the videos appearing on your screen. Forward combatants, see you next time.